Okay guys, this is part 3. We just ended up with Antietam and Lincoln issuing his preliminary emancipation. So this is the turning point. You've got New Orleans has fallen, and Grant is coming from Tennessee to meet Farragut and the Navy at Vicksburg. So this is gonna be the turning point of the war. In the East, Gettysburg is going to be the turning point as well. Okay, so as we discussed, the Emancipation Proclamation goes into effect with all the states in rebellion as of January 1st, 1863. So you see he does not apply this to the border states, but basically this is a political move on Abraham Lincoln's part to keep England out of the war, and it also changes the moral focus of the war from just keeping the Union together to freeing the slaves. So how many people were actually freed? As you can see, not really anybody at this point, but it really was a political move, and it did inspire quite a few of the slaves the enslaved people when they heard about it, and so it was a move that he knew could be overturned, and Lincoln at this point in time is already going to start pushing for the passage of the 13th Amendment. These are your major engagements, and there's lots and lots of battles being fought, you guys, but we're basically covering the big ones, okay? As you saw on your map activity, lots and lots and lots of battles, but we're just hitting the high points. So Chancellorsville, and it is a Confederate victory. However, at Chancellorsville, this is where Thomas Stonewall Jackson is accidentally shot by his own men. Ultimately, his arm is amputated. It develops an infection, and Lee is going to lose his most important general, probably someone who really kept him thinking about strategy, and probably Gettysburg may not have happened had Stonewall Jackson lived. So you see Gettysburg, a Union victory, and then Vicksburg we'll be talking about. So at Chancellorsville, Lee's perfect victory. It was a strategic, just an amazingly strategic victory. He beat the Union Army that had 133,000 to his 60,000. Just by maneuvers. He did have a superior cavalry, and General Joseph Hooker is the new, remember Burnside, now we have a new one, General Hooker, and Lee is going to outmaneuver him and win this victory at Chancellorsville. And basically we can look at all of this and we can evaluate, but this is one that is studied. You can see Jackson over here on the left-hand side. He's going to flank the Union Army and actually push them into what they call the wilderness. So Confederate losses, about the same number killed, 13,000 casualties, and the Union casualties, 17,000. Now what you got to understand too, though, is the Union, with their population, with this war of attrition, they could replace men. The Confederates, on the other hand, did not have men to replace the ones that were lost. You can see the movement here. Sorry. Okay, this is Jeb Stuart over here on the left. Lee moving, Early, all of these just excellent generals that are using strategy. And up here we lose Stonewall Jackson. Okay. This is how the battle. Now we have this argument about Civil War and Civil War monuments. This is a monument, a Confederate memorial at Arlington National Cemetery. This is unknown soldiers in the Civil War at Arlington. And this one will probably stand. I mean, it is a cemetery, and the Confederate flags, though, from what I understand, have come down. You can see the devastation of the war, the Civil War. Almost over 2% of the total population of the United States died in the American Civil War. In the Revolutionary War, that's the next highest because we had a very low population, 1%. In World War II, where over 400,000 people died, it was 0.3% of the population. So this is, and they're all, this is all Americans, 520 deaths a day during the Civil War. This was a devastating war. You needed men, and so the Confederates instituted a draft, and in both the Confederacy and the Union, if you were rich enough, you could hire somebody to take your place in the draft. Planters, because the troops needed food, they needed supplies, they were exempt if they had 20 or more slaves. In the Union, you could pay somebody $300 and they could take your place, and they basically could meet the boats, and a lot of immigrants end up fighting in this war because they would basically pay them to take it. So it was, this is the draft slogan, a rich man's war and a poor man's fight. We see this again in Vietnam, actually. It just seemed like more of the young men who couldn't afford college, who, just got out of high school. Some of your middle class and poor kids ended up fighting in the Vietnam War. People were not happy about this, and there were rioting. One of the worst one was in New York City, and it's called the New York City Draft Riot. 100 people end up dying in fires in this riot that was racially motivated. Some of you guys that say all the North was anti-slavery and so forth, a lot of the Northerners really didn't even think about slavery. They wanted to keep the Union together, but it just wasn't an issue. They were working in factories, their life wasn't that great, and they were actually afraid of the enslaved people, once they were free, coming up and taking their jobs. If you ever get a chance, well, it's a pretty violent movie, but Gangs of New York, that kind of talks about this particular time period. Immigrants. In the North, there were people that were totally against the war, and they were called Copperheads. They were for peace. They wanted Lincoln to negotiate with the South. They wanted him to let him go. Especially among the border states, Lincoln is going to say you don't need habeas corpus to throw somebody in jail. He's basically going outside the Constitution to prevent insurrection. And Clement Vallandigham was an Ohio Copperhead who was very critical of Lincoln, and he is going to end up getting him. Doesn't look good for the South. Battle of Gettysburg. This is going to be a long battle. You can see it's in July. It's very hot. Lee invades Pennsylvania. He's hoping to get a victory in the north. You can see where Washington, D.C. is here. Jeb Stuart actually gets right outside of Washington, D.C., and he is with the cavalry. And basically he gets delayed, and Lee does not get good information about Union troops, which was part of the problem with Gettysburg. He actually goes to a shoe factory, Lee does, and he's wanting to get boots and supplies for his men, and they engage with Union forces at a small town called Gettysburg on the first day, and Lee basically allows the Union Army to take the high ground. This is a very, very huge battlefield, and it kind of looks like a big old fish hook here. And there's battles going on to the south at the Round Top, Little Red Round Top, battles going on to the north, and then right along the famous Pickett's Charge, where they are pretty much picked off by the Union. This is going to be a horrible defeat by the Confederates, although look here, you have 46,000 casualties. This is the bloodiest battle of the war. We had the bloodiest day of the war at Antietam, also in the north and rather than the south, and now you're going to have the worst day of killing. Almost 8,000 people are killed in this battle, 27,000 wounded, and a lot captured and missing. So this was a devastating battle, and this is Lee's first super major defeat. On the same day, pretty much, on the same time, Grant has put a siege on Vicksburg, and this has lasted for a while. The people of Vicksburg have been virtually cut off. Some of them are eating rats. They're so hungry. They're in caves. You can see they are kind of surrounded, and it lasts from November through April, and then Vicksburg will finally fall in July, and pretty much almost on the same exact time frame as Gettysburg. And you can see how it's unfolding. They're up on this bluff, and Grant is able to use the Navy to his advantage. Vicksburg. This is showing how the people were starving to death, eating their horses, eating rats, and this is going to be the beginning of the end for the Confederates. Another siege takes place, and this is the longest siege in U.S. history. They're going to hold out for 48 days at Fort Hudson. You can see where Baton Rouge is here, and they also are going to be surrendering in July. They put up fake guns to try and scare off the Union soldiers, and this is called a Quaker gun, and we actually did that over here on the Red River called Fort Humbug, trying to keep them away from Shreveport So this is a turning point. These are back-to-back losses at Gettysburg and Vicksburg. These are severe blows to the Confederacy, and now that Copperhead movement is going to start failing as the Union is showing victory. President Lincoln goes to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and gives his famous Gettysburg address. I used to make you guys memorize this. It's an amazing speech, and it's ranked as probably in the top 10 of all the speeches ever given in America, the Gettysburg Address. So this is different now. Now Lincoln is seen not just as keeping the Union together, but liberating people and fighting against slavery.